There are a few certainties in life: death, taxes, and camera YouTubers being overly obsessed with coffee and filming B-roll sequences of coffee as if they were the first to do so. The other certainty in life, it's a little known fact that using a Mattebox makes you a pro, and using it with a rig makes you a super pro. And if you actually know how to use all that together and actually operate it, it makes you a super mega ultra pro. And that's the exact reason that I bought the polarpro Basecamp Mattebox system, because I want to be the ultra super mega pro that I was always destined to be. And for the people who can't sense the sarcasm, no piece of gear will ever make you a professional, not even an iPhone whatever number Pro Max. Shut up, I've got one. Nothing is pro about a phone, I don't care what you say. But while we are joking about it making it look professional, we might as well talk about it. So there is absolutely zero doubt in my mind. There is clients out there who have no idea about an amateur or a professional camera, and having a Mattebox on the end of your camera can be the difference in them taking you more seriously, giving you more trust, and just believing in you. They just go, this dude's legit, and that can be enough sometimes. It's super handy when a client believes in you because they give you more trust and they allow you to be you and capture the best version of what they're looking for. When a client doesn't believe in you and they're hovering over your shoulder, directing, and they're not even the creative one, it can be really difficult at times. There is no doubt in my mind, people see gear and their minds get blown. When I got my driving license, I bought a car. I bought a Nana's car that had a body kit on it. It was a Too Fast, Too Furious Lancer Evo. And people who didn't know cars super well, they thought I had a really expensive, really fast car.
Hey, where'd you get them cars that bought of a cereal box?
People absolutely judge a book by its cover. So there is a stupid superficial benefit that does come from having a Mattebox on the front of your camera. So if you get a new client or retain an old one or get more belief from a customer from having one, well, count it. But the real benefit of a Mattebox and why you should actually choose the right one for you is not what it looks like, but it's what it functionally does. The polarpro Basecamp Mattebox mounts lenses in two different ways. You've got clamps for your bigger cine lenses, and you've got threaded adapters for your DSLR or mirrorless lenses. Think like a big step-up ring. The big step-up ring adapters will work for lenses up to 95mm, whereas the clamps will work up to 110mm diameter lenses. What a Mattebox physically does, it allows you to block unwanted flaring from light sources using the flag up top. When this flag is shut, it gives the filters a little bit of extra protection, but more or less this is a glorified filter holder. The Basecamp as standard will allow you to hold a polarizer and one creative filter. And if you get the stage 3 adapter like myself, it gives you a second square filter slot. I purchased a range of filters. I got both the 2-5 and the 6-9 stop VNDs in both the normal and the mist variants. You might see this solid piece of glass and go, how is that a variable neutral density filter? And the answer is it's not. It needs to have the circular polarizer installed to activate the variable portion of that ND. If you have a regular variable ND filter, essentially what it's doing is two circular polarizers working against each other to give you that variable ND. And that's why if you go too far, you get what's called cross polarization. So where the two polarizers cross each other and it's no good to use. So if you are using a variable ND filter, you are going to be required to use the circular polarizer plus your ND, which means you don't have any more trays available for any creative filters. So if you do want to use a creative filter as well, you are going to need to get the stage 3 attachment that gives you a second square filter slot. This means you can use your circular polarizer, your VND, and a mist filter. Or it means you can use a polarizer, a mist filter, and a blue streak filter. It just opens up a real range of different things that you can use. I also bought a few creative filters at the same time. I picked up the blue morphic, the gold morphic, as well as the quarter strength mist filter. Creative filters I got are the square drop-ins. You can also get the gold morphic and the blue morphic in that same 95mm diameter as the circular polarizer. This goes in the same spot and has pros and cons to it. Because it goes in the same spot as the circular polarizer, it means that if you put these filters in there, you cannot use any ND. Now most of the time I use this Mattebox, I'm probably going to be using ND, so that polarizer needs to be in there. So it makes sense for my streak filters to be on the outside. But if you do have a streak filter in the circular spot, it means you can actually rotate it and change the angles of your streaks, but I'm willing to trade that off. It's important to note that these square drop-in filters are a proprietary size. They will only work in the polarpro Basecamp Matteboxes. There are some industry standard sizes that will work along many different Matteboxes, but not these ones. These will only work in the polarpro Basecamp range. And I think the Summit as well, which is the photography based one. So we've got the mist filter, the blue morphic, and the gold morphic, or the Anamor phake, if you will. These filters are all about what they can do to the look of your image. Starting with the mist filter. Right now I'm shooting on the quarter strength mist filter. I think it looks alright. Shooting with a mist filter will clean up skin tones, it'll give some nice blooms and some halations around lights, and it gives a real dreamy sort of effect, and it takes a bit of the digitalness out of the DSLR lenses that we use these days. If you're trying to set a bit of an old school vibe, or dare I say the word cinematic, and on that, no single piece of gear will ever make your work cinematic, and nor does buying a cinema camera make you a cinematographer. Too many claims these days. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. Mist filters are great. I would recommend going on the lower strength. This one right here is a quarter, because every time you use a creative filter, this is baked into your shot. If you go too strong, you cannot take it back. I think a quarter is a really nice place to start with mist. It's there, it's apparent, and it cleans up and it looks really nice, but it's not too overly stylized like some of the much stronger variants. The other reason I went for the quarter strength mist filter was that I knew that if I wanted more mist, I've got that stage 3 adapter. I can have my mist variable ND as well as this mist filter, stack them together, get extra halations, extra bloom, extra mist. So next filter we'll talk about is the sexy one. It is the blue morphic and the gold morphic fake anamorphic streak flares. I said morphic a lot of times there. So these are going to give you some pretty aggressive streaks straight across your image. Now this is a very desired stylized look, but use it with caution. An anamorphic lens will give you a nice flare across the image, but it'll also have some other artifacts going around that look quite nice and complement that. This will give you quite an aggressive streak, and it's not for every single shot. So use it with caution, don't overuse it, because remember, it is baked into the final shot and you cannot change that. But they can give us that stylized look that an anamorphic lens can offer us, and yes, there's way more benefits to actually using an anamorphic lens over a filter, but that's not what we're talking about today. When using these anamorphic flare filters, it is important to note that as awesome as they are, they do have some downsides. The way the filter is constructed, it has some vertical lines going down that catches the light to make the flare straight across the image. So when you defocus, these actually show up in the image. So if you're using one of these filters and you're gonna have a defocus shot, you're gonna wanna make sure you take that filter out. You can also sometimes see these lines in a normal shot, depending on how strong and aggressive that light source is and how direct it's coming into the sensor. So you wanna be a little bit clever about how you shoot, make sure you're monitoring all these things so you don't get home into the computer and go, shit. Another downside to them, if you are a run and gun shooter and you rely on autofocus, a lot of the time, depending on how aggressive the light source is and how big the flare is, this can play with your autofocus. So keep that in mind when you're planning your shot. Probably one of the biggest downsides of the streak filters is it flares off everything. This is not a filter you want to take to town where there's like a million different light sources coming at you at once, because your whole image is just going to be flares left and right, and it's going to be pretty distracting. This is probably better suited to a head torch on a hiker, a car coming around a corner in the darkness. Give that like nice punchy sort of streak. Speaking of distracting, I thought, why the hell not? I'm going to use the blue and the gold at the same time. And yes, there was flares absolutely everywhere, but it's kind of interesting to know that the blue and the yellow kind of play with each other, give you a bit of a green sort of flare. So just interesting. So like I said, these filters are probably better suited toward headlamps or headlight situations. I do also like to just shine a torch in from the side while I'm filming some B-roll, and it gives a nice streak across without being too aggressive. I find it just gives a shot a little bit of something extra, a little bit of spice or a little bit of zing. These anamorphic filters are absolutely not perfect, but they are good, and I do think they're worth the coin. So for this, I purchased one of the lens mount options. What I have found is with the 2470 G Master on the A7S III and the Condor Blue base plate system, the pins don't line up. So this means if you force it in, you're either bending the rails or you're putting a lot of stress on the lens mount on the camera. So I need to pick up myself a bit of a cheese plate to kind of extend that gap, drop the rail support down, and I should be fine. So for future generations, what I'd love to see is a way that they could put hard stops in on that circular polarizer. And if they can't do that, at least a way to stop so you don't go into cross polarization territory. I'd also love to see the circular polarizer come in its own housing and be a drop-in, drop-out in that same circular slot in like a version 2 of this, because as it stands, you just kind of leave the polarizer in sometimes when you don't want it because it's too much of a hassle to take out, because you do need to take the whole matte box off, clip the filter out, and it's a bit time consuming. So if they could fix that in the next generation, that would be sweet. The other thing, when you're using the lens support, you're always going to get a level install. But when you don't use those rod supports, you're not guaranteed that. So I'd like to see a spirit level on top to make sure it's always level. And if not a spirit level, maybe like a bayonet, like a lens hood would attach to a lens. Something that guarantees a straight install every time. I'm a bit of a greenhead and I like to do my part for the environment, reuse, recycle, do what I can. The packaging does look like it's recycled cardboard, which is cool. It doesn't say that, but there is just so much cardboard. Just feels very unnecessary how much packaging there was when you consider what actually came out of those boxes. I suppose it's all going to get recycled anyway, so maybe it's not so bad, but if they could cut down on that, that'd be awesome. And also cases. There are so many cases. Every individual filter comes with its own case, but then you just take them out of those cases to put them in the big filter case. You can probably save a little bit of money, bring down the price, get rid of those cases. I know I bought separate items, not everything was a bundle per se, but it just seems like there's a lot of cases and a lot of stuff that's just ultimately going to go to waste or just sit in a drawer somewhere. So realistically, there's actually not a ton to talk about. Like, these are filters. If your image looks good, then it is good. I love the footage that I've been able to get out of mine so far, so should you buy one? This part isn't so easy to advise. It's hard to tell someone to spend $2,200 Australian on a filter holder and some filters. Mine cost $2,200 Australian and I got hit with an extra $200 of import fees. So as you can tell, this video is not sponsored. So clearly this is not a cheap investment, but for my situation, I've got lenses with diameters from 67 all the way through to 82mm. So if I was to invest in good quality filters, polarizers, NDs for all those different sizes, I'd probably come out at more than $2,200. If you are doing that, I'd recommend buying 82mm filters and then buying step-up rings, but just so you can kind of see where I'm coming from. I look at this as a long-term investment. If my films are more aesthetically pleasing and that in turn gets me new clients because my films and my work looks better, then it's definitely worth it. And if one person superficially either books me, rebooks me, or approaches me on the street because my rig looks good, then hey, the superficial side works too. And on that, last Friday night, I was walking through town with my camera rigged out with a Mattebox on the front. People stop and stare. They assume you are legit. All it does, it takes one of those people to come up and ask what you do. You've got a dialogue, that is a potential new customer. Everyone's needs are different. There's days that this won't even get taken on a shoot because some days I don't want a big rig. I just want a small camera and lens combination to get the shots that I want. So at the end of the day, what is the point? I wanted this and no one really needs it, but it does help take your work to another level if that is what you're aiming to do. And I personally really intend to use this how it's meant to be used. And if someone superficially books me because of it, happy days. But at the end of the day, no one needs a Mattebox. You buy a Mattebox because you want it and you intend to use it how it was intended to be used. And that's what I intend to do. I'm sure you agree with me that the footage we're seeing throughout these videos is pretty nice. And if you use it the way it's intended to be built, you'll have a great time. So if you're a pro, I'm sure you'll love one of these things. However, if you're not a pro, do not bother, you will not use it. And you're probably better off spending $2,200 on a new lens or maybe some bills.
I got bills, I gotta pay.
But if you're a pro and you need it, I don't think you'll regret it.
No regrets.
Like not even a single letter.
If there's any questions you have about this Mattebox that I didn't answer in this video, let me know in the comments below and I'll do my best to get back to you. While you're down there, please give it a big fat thumbs up and hit the subscribe button. That stuff's super helpful in growing this channel. And if you'd like to support this channel, there are some affiliate links down below. Before we go, the suggestion is on theme with polarpro. It is Norma Jean, polar similar. It's heavy and it's tasty. All right, that's me. Bye. Join us on Instagram. Dun dun dun. I am dun 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 dun.